Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It is your boy, Jon GMAC, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Joined today by a man who is, he's staring the rest of his life right in the face. I just asked him, it's Wednesday, right? Yep. Okay. So that means let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So not under 100 hours because we're recording in the morning. In a little bit more than 100 hours from when we are recording this right now, the man I am speaking to will no longer be a single man. He will be a married man. And that man, of course, is Andrew Claudio.
Legal sense of the term speaking, obviously. But 3 hours, 3 days, 15 hours, 16 minutes, exactly. Got the countdown on my phone. In fact, I'm doing a fun thing on Instagram where I count down the days by posting photos of like athletes that wore the specific number of days. So like for number 11, I had Jalen Brunson, I had Mark Messier, I had Kellen Clemens. Today, number 4 would obviously be Derrick Rose, would be Wilmer Flores, would also be Brett Favre, but I am intentionally going to put his ass because his time as a Jet was not exactly memorable. And so it's good. Can I ask you a question as we make this completely self-involved?
Yeah, sure.
So you planned the entirety of your wedding, right?
I planned our entire wedding. Yes. It felt like my wedding. It was, I had dreamed of it since I was a 13-year-old girl. Yes. So
I have to ask, solely because I know you and I know your deficiencies with technology, and like Google Docs and email have been a godsend for me throughout this entire process. And, creating group chats and coordinating that way and how we've planned most of this has any added stress that I would have had in college had I not understood these processes have been a lot easier now. So Jon, I'm curious, how did you survive? Because I'm assuming you didn't Google Doc and email your way through wedding planning.
No, I mean, I emailed a lot. No, I emailed a ton. Okay. Google Docs, though, I'm trying to think what Google Docs weren't really necessary. I mean, I didn't need to communicate. The only people I communicated with were the various vendors. Mm-hmm. And that's really it, because I didn't need to ask anybody's opinion on anything because I was just deciding everything myself. I don't really care what everybody else thought.
Yeah. The amount of people I've had to send me your timeline. What's your timeline? It's like add to Google Doc. And the funny thing is, every married person I talk to is like, that timeline doesn't matter at all. That day is going to go how it goes. And
look, we don't want to make this
spend the entire last 3 months working on does not matter.
We don't have to talk about this for too long, but I will say the one thing for me, you want to talk about just the MCU just popped into my head. The sacred timeline was indeed the only thing that, above all else, that mattered to me on that day, to the point where the one rule, the one unbreakable rule I had going into the wedding day was that if we allotted 30 minutes for pictures, there would not be 33 minutes for pictures. There would not be 31 minutes for pictures. There would be 30 minutes for pictures, because I decided long in advance that day would be a day to be enjoyed, not a day to be left catering to other people. And let me tell you, I stuck to that rule.
Oh, man.
And I have zero regrets.
Groomzilla over here.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like you enjoyed it, so it works out. But I think Tibbs would be very proud of the rigidity and the sternness of sticking to that.
Yeah, the portion of the night that I remember, I certainly enjoyed.
Oh, well, there's that element of it too that I unfortunately can't partake in. But,
no,
I'm excited. You know what else is happening on Sunday around the same time, Jon?
The Knicks are playing a basketball game.
Yes, programming note. We will not have a post-game live stream after that basketball game. The KFS crew has other things to do on Sunday.
But I was about to say, but we will have post games for the other games. So Saturday, shout
out to Chris, shout out to Sean. They will both be producing the pod and giving you a post game after the Trevor Keels show this Saturday in Las Vegas. So hope you enjoy all of Knicks faithful. Knicks play basketball on Saturday.
I'm trying to think when's the last time I've been less excited for a summer league game. It's.
Can I actually talk? Can we start there?
Sure.
Because the first interaction you and I kind of had on the internet before I was at KFS, before we really knew each other in any type of capacity, was a tweet you sent out during the 2018 Summer League.
Oh, Jesus.
Where you said, and I wish I thought of it to pull it up and actually go look at it, but people on the Twitter.
Wait, hold on. You could pull up old tweets that people send out?
You're amazing. You are actually amazing.
What's the tweet?
That's your question is actually amazing. You said about Kevin Knox, who had a flurry of threes to end a second quarter.
Oh, geez.
The Knicks wiped out like a 12-point lead and went into halftime winning. And for Knicks fans at the time, it was one of the highlights of the last 5-6 years. And I'd always had a thing against Summer League. Not necessarily that I didn't enjoy it, but I was like, this doesn't matter. Like this is practice for the most part. This is a scrimmage that they're televising. But I recognize that when you're a team that's rebuilding and a team that's not had a lot of success, that moments like this, this does matter because this is potentially the most competitive basketball you're going to watch this season. And the tweet you sent out after Knox hit all those threes, and boy, we're not necessarily wrong, but were we overreacting to what we thought was a steal at number 9 in the draft? The thought that you put out there was, could this be one of the biggest or top 5 moments the Knicks have had in the last decade? And how far we've come that since Summer League 2018, we've got some playoff moments in there, some hardware. We've had players make all-star teams, all-NBA teams. We had the offseason gem that people have to give us credit for with Jalen Brunson. And I just... how far we've come that we're now ready for Summer League, and it's a distant afterthought because we have playoff expectations now surrounding this franchise. And it's a cool retrospective when you think back to then to where we are now.
I mean, well, first of all, the irony of you pointing out that the Knox Summer League explosion did not ultimately end up mattering as it came to foretelling his ultimate NBA career, is that perhaps the moment that he ceased to become an NBA player, or he no longer was an NBA player, occurred in Summer League at a game that I was at and witnessed live, which was when Zion Williamson snatched both the ball and Kevin Knox's soul in the first game that those two teams played in, what was that, 2019?
That was the earthquake night, right?
That was the earthquake game, yeah. Which was weird. It felt for like 5 or 10 seconds like you got really drunk, and then it stopped, and then that was that. So yeah, I actually there was a part of me who thinks that Kevin Knox was never the same after that. But no, but then like you think to like pre-Tibbs, pre-Leon, whatever you want to say, that era. And you think to the most meaningful, things that had happened to the franchise in the preceding, whatever it was, however many years, like the Porzingis Summer League does stand out. The Mitchell Robinson Summer League absolutely stands out.
That's that same Summer League.
The Mitchell Robinson Summer League,
2018, because while Knox was hitting all these threes and
Mitch was all over the court,
a ton of usage, Mitch was blocking threes, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this?"
And actually, funny enough, the RJ Summer League, which was the same Summer League as the Knox rebound getting stolen, that stands out to me just because, and it's so funny. you want to talk about a microcosm of what his career ended up becoming, because he had those first two games that were just two of the most dreadful games you could ever imagine. People were going crazy. The Knicks blew the number 3 pick in the draft, the whole thing. And then the next two games after that, he rebounded and he played pretty well, put up some nice numbers, looked a lot better. And, it was an inconsistent performance, but one that was kind of, a Rorschach test for what you thought of this player. And now here we are sitting there 4 years later, and RJ's career is very much a Rorschach test for kind of what your opinions on him are. Anyway, enough about Summer League. I don't have anything else to say about Summer League, but
enjoy it. If you want to watch, enjoy it this weekend. The Knicks play basketball this weekend.
The Knicks do play basketball.
If you want to watch your team play basketball, even if it might not include a rotation player.
I was about to say, if a single player who is appearing in the Summer League ends up playing a minute in a non-blowout game this year, something probably went wrong.
Probably.
Which is a good.
Let's be positive. Something probably went right that one of these kids popped. Like the Jalen Martins of the world. Suddenly he showed up. It was like, oh, this is your new ninth man.
Man. If the Knicks return into I am excited about Jalen Martin from what little I know about him, but he definitely seems like an interesting developmental prospect. But if Jalen Martin's playing basketball for the team this year, that means I don't know what that means, but it means something did not go according to plan.
Yeah, injuries. But my point is the positivity of something went right.
Something went right. Well, it's a good transition. So we are sitting here right now. It is, like I said, it's Wednesday morning. The last emergency live stream, so many emergency live streams. The last emergency live stream Jeremy and I did,
friggin' Knicks,
ended on Saturday night, right? And I think both of us ended that sharing the feeling that, the Knicks certainly did not have to make any additional moves, and the possibility existed that they would not make any other moves. Both of us felt at the time that the Knicks, there would be something else coming. And now, sitting here, I can't tell how I feel, because I'm going to walk you through this. I'll try to be brief, but I'm of two minds here. First mind is we've gotten some reporting, specifically from Ian Begley, which Ian didn't come out and say like the Knicks are done, but seems to indicate that barring something unforeseen, this is the team that's going to go into the season. And as we all know, we always trust what Ian says. His reporting is rock solid. And I believe that. I believe that to a certain extent, that the Knicks would be okay bringing this team into the regular season. That said, the rotation, which is why by the way, the funniest thing since the Obi trade and since the DiVincenzo signing, the funniest thing to me is it's actually not funny. It's an indictment on the failings of math classes across the country. The hullabaloo about the Knicks need to sign a backup power forward to play like regular rotation minutes is an evidence to me of the fact that people across this country, or at least New York, do not know how to add or perhaps multiply or just use a calculator because the minutes are not there. I don't know what people are missing when it comes to this.
Oh, so there's apparently pushback to the Knicks have one more rotation spot to fill, is what you're saying.
They do not have another rotation spot to fill. They have no minutes to give another rotation player.
I understand that. That's why my thought is if they're going out and getting a power forward, it's because the trade happened. It's like a consolidation trade.
Yeah, it would be It would be a consolidation trade, or I suppose a breaking case of emergency. Julius goes down for 3 weeks with a sprained ankle. We don't feel comfortable having Isaiah Roby start a power forward, that sort of thing. But and granted, like you always tell me, what you see on Twitter is not how people are actually thinking. But boy, oh boy, am I seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter about the Knicks need this person, the Knicks need that person, because they just can't play these games without a nominal power forward of this. I'm like, yeah.
I think, Jonathan, that because Benji's tweet did some work the other day that I thought was revealing that a lot of people were indeed. To those who didn't see it, he basically asked, like, so who's the backup four that you guys are terrified of? That like Josh Hart can't fill those minutes, and like Bobby Portis is shaking your boots, keeping you up at night. And I understand the pushback and the way the Knicks used Obi. It like DiVincenzo can fill that, and I guess technically Josh Hart.
Yeah, but it's not. It's Hart that's filling it. Hart slides
DiVincenzo can fill the minutes and fill the role is what I'm saying. He can be a corner boy that is just really good on wide open catch and shoots threes, and you find 5 or 6 minutes from him elsewhere, and he suddenly matches the minutes he was playing in Golden State
or more.
Or more. You're funny. I think Josh Hart, while I looked at him as a luxury, as a guy who can rebound like that from the three, will now have the task of being the backup four, which, as you saw, could be 4 minutes a half, given what Julius Randle has been through the first 4 years with the Knicks. Yeah. I think, personally, the calculation that I've been making is this really what the Knicks roster is going to be, and the backup four is really going to be Josh Hart, it's not necessarily a pushback on Tibbs, because I'm just surprised that this would be the roster they would decide to go with, because it's small. And for someone that desires rim protection as much, again, I thought the whole point of Josh Hart making the difference he made was, you're from the three, you're an elite rebounder. You're getting an advantage from a position you don't normally get that advantage from. And I think it just also goes to, we're going to see it next year when he plays in Indiana, but this is how little Obi was used last year. It's really just 8 to 12 minutes that you have to figure it out. And on certain nights, Julius will play an extra 2-3 minutes because the backup four is getting killed on the boards. And on certain nights, they'll be more creative and go small, which I'm actually excited about.
Look, maybe I see things in a unique way. Like whatever play, it doesn't matter if it's a backup power forward. Like Giannis Antetokounmpo, whatever. Any player who you think of in the NBA that you're like, well, the Knicks aren't going to have a traditional backup power forward to guard this person. If you ask Tom Thibodeau, or frankly any coach in the league, who would they rather have guarding player X? Doesn't matter who player X is. Josh Hart or Obi Toppin? Guess what? The answer is going to be Josh Hart. If you ask any coach in the league, who's more likely to grab a big rebound, Josh Hart or Obi Toppin? Doesn't matter who's fighting for the rebound. The answer is going to be Josh Hart.
I'm not even disagreeing with that point.
Yeah.
It's literally, I'm just surprised that they chose to go smaller with their backup. Not even backup four, just like with that rotation spot. To be honest, this is the most progressive part about it, is it's actually forward thinking. You chose shooting over this square peg, square hole of, we lost a four. Now we go get a traditional four.
But it's not only shooting. It's shooting. It's speed. Mm-hmm. It's switchability. It's ball movement. It's all of the ways the sport is going right now. Yeah. They chose all of the on the surface, on its face. That is what they chose, other than going to get a traditional power forward. And again, to anybody who's like, well, they're not actually going to do that, they're going to go a different way. Maybe they are, but if they are going to make another move and go the more traditional route and have someone, whether it's a starting three who could double as a backup four, which me and Jeremy talked about if they went and traded for OG Anunoby or Paul George, whatever, or something else, like that means someone here would be saying goodbye. And if we haven't made that point loud and clear, which gets me to the other part of it, which is, okay, maybe this is the roster, but I find a few things interesting. First thing I find interesting, I think this was also an emergency live stream. I know the Harden rumors where it was like everybody got crazy scared because of that Woj tweet. Mm-hmm. But like, unless I've missed something, their name keeps getting trotted out there. Like Woj continued to say their name. Brian Windhorst continued. And just like, I think, the Knicks will be on the periphery. Maybe this is nonsense. Maybe it's a complete smokescreen. Maybe the Knicks are being used as leverage. Maybe Daryl Morey asked, the folks at ESPN to do him a solid, put the Knicks out there as a potential contender for a Harden trade so that the Clippers would be forced to pony up whatever else they don't want to currently pony up. All of that's possible. What's interesting to me about it is if you do the math, and I'm sorry that Jeremy's not here because usually this is his department, but if you do the math and you do the Harden trade that is the least, I'll say, invasive of the roster, which is Fournier's expiring contract and then Hardenstein's salary. And then you would need one other minimum salary to make the math work. So Daquan Jeffries, right? If you do those things, that's 3 players going out for one. Harden comes back. The player that's coming back, James Harden, makes more than the 3 players going out. Because of the concept, and I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, because of the concept of you need to have a certain amount of players signed for to the roster, and those players all carry minimum holds, that would take the Knicks into the luxury tax.
Right.
There is essentially no way to make a Harden trade without going into the luxury tax, unless you talk about a bigger trade and a trade that would involve potentially Immanuel Quickley going out, although the math even on that one would get a little dicey, or RJ Barrett going out, which we don't need to talk about. I just want to note that, that's the reality. If they made a James Harden trade, that's number one.
That's the math, yes.
Number two, have we heard a single, and this is not maybe saying anything, but I just find it interesting. Have we heard a single word about Immanuel Quickley having any sort of discussions about an extension?
Just the number he's going to want.
5 for 125. Okay.
No, is 9 figures is what we heard. We didn't hear that number. We heard 9 figures.
For 4 years, though. I think
four for 100. Yeah. The 5 125 is the max he can get, right? Which they're not going to do.
No, 5. No, the max you can get.
Well, okay, the max is the max. Yeah. The point being, I just, the only thing that I've seen is that report from the Heavy, which decide on your own time if you find that credible, is the 9 figures.
So, as everybody knows, well, everybody who listened to the podcast last summer knows, if you sign a rookie or a guy in a rookie contract to an extension, it doesn't make him untradeable, but it essentially makes him untradeable because there's a poison pill thing, or I forget what the actual language is, whatever. But his outgoing salary, or his incoming salary for the team that's acquiring him is the new salary, is whatever the average annual salary is on the new contract. So if Quickley signed for $25 million a year, it's $25 million. The outgoing salary for the team that trades the player is his 4th year salary. Which for Immanuel Quickley is a very, very small amount of money. It's $4-something million. So if they extend Immanuel Quickley this year, he is on the team until after July 1st, 2024. Again, I find it interesting that we have not heard word one about the fact that any discussions even happening, let alone sides being far apart.
Yet from the people who are friends of our show that we've asked, that have inside information and would have the access or better hypothetical guess to what would happen, they've all said, yeah, I think Quickley's going to extend this summer.
Okay. Maybe he does. And then the last thing, Jared Weiss, who's a beat reporter for the Celtics for The Athletic, had a article come out, I think it was last night, Tuesday night. So listing several teams that were in the market potentially for Grant Williams. Grant Williams, backup power forward on the Boston Celtics. He's a restricted free agent this summer. His market coming into the summer was thought to be the mid-level exception, the full mid-level exception, $12.4 million at a minimum. There was some thought that some team with cap space could perhaps exceed that number to pry him away from Boston. The teams that were mentioned, I believe it was the Knicks, the Mavericks, and the Wizards, I want to say, are the three teams that were mentioned. Unless I'm mistaken, none of those teams have cap space.
Atlanta, Charlotte, Dallas, New York, and Washington.
Yeah, Atlanta. Sorry, I forgot about Atlanta and I forgot about Charlotte. Those teams don't have cap space either. Nobody has cap space except for San Antonio has a bunch of cap space. Hello, Evan Fournier. Which we'll get back to that in a second. And then I think there's a few other teams that have a little bit of money, but none of those teams are mentioned as a potential Grant Williams destination. The gist of the article basically goes that like nobody has there's no one out there who's going to be able to sign Grant Williams to a contract that the Celtics are not going to match. So already, because the Celtics are capped out the wazoo and they're in the process of negotiating this Jaylen Brown mammoth supermax extension, that they're just going to try to work out a sign and trade for Grant Williams. So Williams could get paid whatever he's going to get paid, and then the Celtics could get something back for him. I think the article mentioned that they were hoping to get a first round pick. I believe Weiss mentioned that it's a rarity for teams to be able to get back a first round pick in a sign and trade for a player of this caliber, which is, a guy who's a backup, whatever. The point of this is that the Knicks were mentioned here. Now, again, you may be listening to this and you may say, Macri, you're the most gullible amongst us. Just because the Knicks are mentioned does not mean the Knicks are actually interested. Okay, fine. I find it interesting because, again, math, there's no way the Knicks are bringing in Grant Williams on via sign and trade and not sending out a player in their current rotation. That's just not happening. There's a 0% chance of that happening.
It's obvious. Yes, you're right.
Okay. There is a fairly obvious way to get something of this nature done. It would be, and shout out to, I think, Brent Hart, he goes by on Twitter, longtime reader and listener to Knicks Film School, mentioned that because there would be base year compensation issues, which there would be. Again, we remember the whole base year compensation issue with, we talked about Mitch last summer and also Jalen Brunson last summer. It would require, long and the short of it, is the Knicks sending a significant salary out. That would be Evan Fournier. And that would be, in all likelihood, to San Antonio because the only team that can inherit his salary. And there's some thought that they may want him because he's French and Victor Wembanyama and the whole thing. And then the Celtics signing and trading Grant Williams to the Knicks, and then the Knicks sending something, or maybe two somethings, one to San Antonio for them to take on Fournier, unless they are willingly doing that, which I'll believe that when I see it, and then another something to the Celtics. And maybe that's just some draft picks. I don't know, but it would stand to reason that if they did something of this nature, rather than expel purely draft capital to bring in Grant Williams, it would instead be a rotation player going out somewhere to some team. And of the two of the players that we keep talking about is like, might they be in the ether? RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley. One of those guys makes $25 million next year and the other guy makes $4 million. So do the math as far as which of those two players will be easier to send out. I find all of this interesting. That's all. So
that was a brilliant 9 minutes of windhorsing. I appreciated it. All to get
Is
to
that a
the
verb
end.
now? Wow.
I just did it. Yes, you windhorsed, where you didn't say a thing. You just find it fascinating, find it interesting that these reports where the Knicks are mentioned, because we've never just kind of seen the Knicks mentioned in reports over our time watching the Knicks and covering the Knicks in the past 5 years. And
for sure,
lead to absolutely nothing except the Knicks or CAA specifically being mentioned so leverage can be created. The Knicks are not trading Immanuel Quickley for Grant Williams, John.
I don't think they are either, to be very clear.
So as a result, I don't think anything of this report, Grant Williams and the Knicks being involved, I believe, and this, again, is mostly just from the people I've talked to and that have somewhat inside info on this. Grant Williams was an option if the Knicks didn't want to go get DiVincenzo, or it didn't work out with DiVincenzo because the Rockets threw a bag at him. And then he was an option for the backup four. I think the Celtics sort of matched anyway. But the point being, if the Knicks had a hold of the backup four, they might have gone after Grant Williams. This also could be if the Knicks do make a consolidation trade, then you have another rotation spot open. And Grant Williams then moves everybody back down. Josh Hart back to his natural 3. DiVincenzo will unfortunately now be the backup point guard. I'm not so sure he can do it, but hey, I saw Alec Burks play point guard for a year, so maybe Tibbs can figure that out too. Point being, Immanuel Quickley is going to be on this team next year, and he's going to be part of the success of this team next year. Not even just because I'm a blind Homer Knicks fan that believes in him, but because he was really good last year and helped them win a ton of games during the regular season. And it was a large reason why they won 47 games.
Indispensable.
And it's why the other big thing, you want to talk about roles on this team. Who's playing point guard if it's not Jalen Brunson?
Well, if Jalen Brunson went down with an injury, so that's the funny part to me is people talk about Julius Randle going down with an injury and like the chaos that would cause. I actually think that's this is not actually a hot take. This is just should be pretty obvious. Brunson going down with an injury would be the thing that would be a real problem. And yeah, if they traded Immanuel Quickley, there's zero player on the roster that could feasibly step into that spot and do. I mean, no one's doing a facsimile of Jalen Brunson, but could be the starting point guard
and keep the same level of what I believe, not elite offensive ability, but impact on both ends. We talked about this or went back and forth about this on the free agency live stream where nothing happened. Well, I believe Brunson has the higher ceiling offensively and how good he is and how he impacts the game. I believe his limitations defensively is where Quickley closes the gap a little bit to where when you go from Brunson to Quickley, it's still you're getting, if you're not getting an elite all-star, you're still getting a solid starting point guard who has the capability to explode for 40 points in Boston Garden. TD
38.
TD Garden. That unnecessary correction. Almost 40 points in Boston Garden. I don't think anything of this report. If the Paul George thing was more fascinating to me, the Harden thing I also think is not happening because I don't think he wants to come to New York.
I don't think so either.
The Paul George of it all, I thought was fascinating, but from all we've heard, I know Alan Hahn said a thing yesterday. I more heard that he doesn't the Clippers don't want to trade him. They want to build a big 3. The Windy report is more what I heard. But I think this is the team. I think the Bagley report is more what I take away from the last couple of days. This is the team.
As do I. And that's why I started with that. Cause I do believe that. And again, never question Ian's reporting at your own risk. It's not going to end well for you. The Hahn thing, just briefly, they didn't want to pay his extension. Well, no shit. But to say that, implies that it's only that and nothing else, when the reality is whether or not you are going to, and this goes for the Knicks, this goes for the Clippers, whether or not you want to pay Paul George's extension has everything to do with all of the other reasons why Paul George is a dicey trade candidate: his age, his injury history, the fact that it's a very large extension and it could be until he gets even more up there in years, and for the Knicks or for any team, what they would give up to acquire. And we should say the Alan Hahn thing, Alan Hahn, Knicks pre and post game analyst for MSG, also ESPN radio personality, on his show, said that the Knicks reached out to the Clippers. They were very interested to just find out the price. Yeah. And it was a hefty price. Yep. And apparently Paul George also was like, well, if you trade me, I want you to extend me too. And the Knicks were like, all right, this is too rich for our blood. Moke Hamilton, an NBA reporter who went on, I forget the radio show he went on, but he was doing a guest spot and confirmed what the price was. And it was RJ Grimes, Fournier's salary, 3 picks. The asking price. The price that the Clippers said. It was that. And then a Paul George extension. And this is where I got to give this front office credit. I know there's 100 people with voices, and at times everything gets the Knicks mentioned in conversations and trade talks, and it's how we can have the Grant Williams conversation without having the Grant Williams conversation. But I believe that they're slow playing this and saving their chips for a much bigger fish. That makes much more sense. I completely agree. I wrote about that very concept today, actually, as we're talking for the Knicks Film School newsletter. in the fact that, like, if you're trying to think of, now that the dust is settled on the summer and now that everybody has their chess pieces realigned, if you're looking for moves the Knicks are going to make, start by looking at moves the Knicks are not going to make. And what the Knicks are not going to do in any way, shape, or form is jeopardize their chances to trade for someone big, whether that's Joel Embiid, who's the most obvious name on the market. But again, referring to Ian Begley's recent reporting, it's not an accident. He mentioned that teams were monitoring the Antetokounmpo situation in Milwaukee. That's another name who could be out there. And then I would define as the least likely because of who he currently plays for and who a trade would involve, but Luka Doncic. And everybody's keeping their eyes on Dallas and what happens with that. But as long as all of these names are out there, the Knicks are not going to do anything as far as expending assets that can decrease their chances of even a little bit of getting one of these guys. The last thing I'll say is that I agree with you. I think I don't know that I would put, I'm not putting 100% chance on it that Immanuel Quickley plays for the Knicks next year. I'd probably put at this point, I don't know, 75% chance, 80% chance.
I wouldn't put it at 100 either, by the way, because like, I think
crazy shit happens.
Crazy shit happens. It's the NBA. And that's another thing you put in your newsletter, which I agreed with. The fact that we could be sitting here a week from now and multiple superstars have been traded and like the Knicks were part of one of the trades. So I would put it closer to 85, 90, but I agree that like it's not a done deal for certain that the Knicks will have Immanuel Quickley on the roster next year.
My main point though is that if you're asking me one thing that I'm going to plant my flag on in terms of roster building for this team moving forward, I'm planting my flag on this. This team is not, I repeat, not in 2 years from now, which is when Jalen Brunson is going to be eligible for his extension, going to be sitting paying what will at that point essentially be half their salary cap to two small guards who the team clearly does not want to put on the floor together if they have their druthers. And that is just not going to happen. And I don't think Jalen Brunson's going anywhere. Doesn't mean Quickley is getting traded today, tomorrow, before next season, during next season. No, it doesn't. But like to me, and this is really what I meant to imply I'm not going to, I will unwindhorst. The fact that just the Knicks are still being mentioned in these things, at least makes me see, or this is what I take from it, that they acknowledge what the future holds. And so they are wondering, well, look, if there needs to be a move here, and we have also talked, obviously, I don't want to leave him out. RJ Barrett is another guy who I know me and Jeremy, and I think you too, feel is probably not going to be here for the long term. They're at least always keeping their eyes open or keeping their eyes open right now as far as like, all right, if we think the future for us, meaning 2, 3, 4 years down the road, does not include these players, well, let's always be on the lookout for, is there an opportunity that makes sense for us to do something now? And that's why I think you're going to continue to hear them being mentioned when it comes to stuff, because again, just looking at the roster, looking at the salary cap, looking at the rotation, they're boxed in unless they want to send out a current rotation player. That's all.
I agree with you. That's why I think this is the current rotation and will be going into training camp next year. And years from now, yes, I agree. They probably won't have both Brunson and Quickley on the roster, although I do take some stock in the closing lineup last year being Brunson and Quickley next to each other. I also look at the playoffs that just happened, and the game changer adjustment Tibbs made in game 3 was going to the guard pick and rolls with Brunson and Quickley, and how effective that was in game 3 and then game 4.
Sure.
So there's not a 0% chance that this couldn't be a lineup that they go to a lot this upcoming season. I think when they make that all-in move, Immanuel Quickley will be included, and it'll suck for a lot of people that fall in love with players that are drafted here. We will get over it when the superstar that comes here is great and we're playing meaningful games in the playoffs that potentially could lead to a championship. At least I hope that that's the direction this goes. Joel Embiid's knees be damned. I look, in the meantime, I said I'd be okay with them running it back. I have more of an affection for Obi than you do, but I recognize
not saying much.
What role he had here was not ideal to what he is good at, and what role they now have for DiVincenzo might actually be the perfect role that he's good at. So I actually think next season is going to be really fun if they just keep it as is. And we'll see a lot of really fun, really fast lineups with them going small and having more shooting out there.
I think,
depending on
injuries, depending on injuries, I think there's a 50-win team. Potentially.
Yeah, think about that. We'll talk about bringing this full circle, John.
Yeah.
From Kevin Knox's second quarter in Summer League is the best moment of the last decade.
Yeah.
To, I think this is at least a 50-win team. Like, appreciate how far we've come, Knicks fans. Like, our off season was a month long. When's the last time our off season was a month long? The Knicks season ended, and then like less than a month later, like the following week was the lottery. The Knicks almost made it to the lottery with their season last year. I think next season we'll have a ton of fun involved, especially if this is the roster, which I think it will be, that they go into it with.
Well, we shall see.
Mm-hmm.
I will just continue to urge everybody.
You don't think they're done, do you? By the way, you think there is going to be a move?
I don't think they're done inquiring.
But that's not what I'm asking.
No, let me rephrase that. I think that I think that they will continue to operate, or they will operate with a level of aggression when it comes to potential moves this summer that I think would perhaps surprise a lot of people. And again, just to be clear, it would not be about them expending the assets that could bring them the super duper star. It would be about them being able to have their cake and eat it too, with what can we make a move now that makes us better and makes it easier for us to navigate in terms of the cap concerns and everything else. Because again, that's the other thing about Quickley. And I should say it explicitly because maybe it's not enough for me to imply it, but like the moment that if they get to next summer and Quickley is still on the roster next summer, then things become very complicated, because then you are either inking him to a massive contract that might inhibit his trade value. Because look, everybody, Tyler Hero, Jordan Poole, like those teams signed those contracts. They didn't do it with like, well, we know the player's value is going to go into the tank the second we sign this contract. But meanwhile, you look after a little while and guess what? Jordan Poole essentially becomes a salary dump. Tyler Hero, Miami's looking around and be like, fuck, can anyone give us anything for Tyler Hero?
To parlay Hero? Hold on. That's not what they're doing with Tyler Hero. They want Dame. Like,
yes. And guess who doesn't want Dame? It's Portland. So all of a sudden, when you sign these players to these extensions, they cease to become intriguing young asset player X, but player X tied to this amount of money. And that the latter of those two is not as appealing to everybody around the league. I'm not saying Tyler Hero is not good. I think Tyler Hero is really good. But for Portland, specifically in their situation, it'd be one thing if Tyler Hero was on a rookie deal and they could then flip him and whatever. But that's not the case. They already have a small guard who's not a point guard tied to big money contract, doesn't play a lot of defense. They're not going to go out and get another one, especially when they already have Shaedon Sharpe and the whole thing. So like the long story short, once you have to extend these young players, it just changes the calculus in terms of how easy it is to trade them a lot. And again, I'm not going to beat around the bunch. I think if the Knicks had a situation where they felt that they could get commensurate value for Quickley this summer. And I don't mean to suggest that the commensurate value is flipping him for fucking Grant Williams. Obviously, they're not going to do that. But is there a world where they can move some pieces around and maybe get another pick in the door and end up with like a Grant Williams or something? I don't know. I have no idea. But I just wonder if these are not some of the conversations that they're having. That's all.
I understand what you're doing in that, like, we're so solely looking at the economics of it all, and
but that's how they have to look at it,
right.
too.
I agree with you that like on the court play is not being factored in here, and it's why the you have to look at it from where he is in his NBA career as far as what he's eligible for, and where he is in his rookie contract, and what he is as an asset right now. Shout out Sam Vecini, who said this on Chris's show. Immanuel Quickley's better than both Jordan Poole and Tyler Hero. So
I agree.
I don't think that while you might say that he'll depreciate in value by the time his extension kicks in, or whoever decides to sign him to a contract as a restricted free agent next summer. I personally think he will continue to be on a bargain deal.
I do want to note, though, that like he has a higher floor than both of those players in that I think, like, well, let's just call a spade. The Heat, there were arguments that they didn't even skip a beat not having Tyler Hero, because what Tyler Hero brings as far as offensive creation is mitigated by something that he takes off the table very much, which is the defense. Immanuel Quickley, he's not the creator that Tyler Hero is, but the defensive ceiling is so much higher, or a number of rephrase that the defense period is just so much better that, like, there's no world where he's not playing 20 plus minutes a night for a playoff team in the league. That's not even still. I think he's a lot easier to move now. Yes. Again, that does not mean they want to move him. That does not mean they're looking to move him. I just think that they are keeping their options open. And that's it.
From an economic standpoint, he is easier to move now. From a logical standpoint, he shouldn't be moved now, which is why any notion of like Grant Williams and a pick, that's where the rest of us would get as upset with that as you were when they didn't trade RJ for Donovan Mitchell.
I wasn't that upset. Listen, last thing that we both got to go. The Knicks are not winning a championship this year. I think we know that. I think they know that. And I think they are not operating. I mean, they should be commended on this, by the way. They are not operating in the sense of like, well, this may look, they don't want to take a step back, to be very clear. But like, if there was a move that did have a downside, i.e. Jalen Brunson gets injured and we have no one for a sustained period of time, we have no one to step in and run the offense in his absence. I wonder if they felt the long-term payoff, meaning basically a year from now or more, was there. Would they not consider something if they felt it was worth it? That's my only point.
Which is why the Paul George thing has always been the biggest thing that fascinated me. If you told me that it was RJ and Quickley and like throwing Quickley into a Paul George trade, I wouldn't love it at first, but I'd like completely understand the basketball argument to that starting five, that closing five.
And I don't know if I'd do that.
I don't know if I would either.
I don't think I would do that.
I'm specifically saying if the Knicks did, I'd be like, you know what? That closing five is Paul George. It's Josh Hart. It's like it's Randall, Brunson, Mitch, and like Paul George is like, I look at him a lot like Darrell Revis, and where like half the field gets taken away. He's the perfect weak side defender in a Tibbs
he's
defense.
Awesome. He's
like
awesome.
The basketball, like Fred may really put two and two together. Like we've talked about this a lot off camera and off the air, but just like the basketball fit making a ton of sense. Perfect. And it's why like I understand if the Knicks did pursue something like that. Would I like the deal, or would I personally do the deal? No, but I would understand why the Knicks did it. Outside of that, run it back. Like outside of like even the OG Anunoby stuff, that's not elevating your ceiling as much. I think either.
You know what's funny to me? We both have to go. I disagree with you in this sense. You do the Paul George trade if it involves RJ and Quickley, if you think that trade makes you a contender right now.
Right.
the reason I would sooner give up both of those guys for OG as opposed to for Paul George is you're not flipping Paul George for Joel Embiid next summer or any such player. If we're trading for Paul George, like you are pot committed to Paul George.
You're saying that Anunoby then is the face of a trade for Embiid. Okay.
Exactly. You're trading to, I don't know what money comparison, but you're essentially, if you do that trade, and there are people listening to this who may feel that both RJ Barrett and Immanuel Quickley individually by themselves are better than OG Anunoby. But if you do that trade, you do it because you think you're trading 2 quarters for a 50-cent piece or 2 50-cent pieces for $1, whatever your analogy is. And then you think it's easier to flip the dollar in a year or something for whatever you're going to flip it for. Or you think that there's another avenue for you to include, significant salary in a trade. I guess that would have to be Randall at that point. Whatever. You get my point. That's all.
I get what you're doing. I still would. OG's not the person I would do that deal for.
That's reasonable.
I would rather use Randall to be that salary. Although, wishful thinking, and you have to.
We all want things.
Actually, consider moving Randall in a deal like that. Last thing I'll say. I just personally, I enjoyed this season a lot. I know you enjoyed the season a lot. And the thought of running it back came up a lot during the last 2-3 months of the regular season. And honestly, throughout the Cleveland series, that this is my team. This is our team. And while, yes, they may be intrigued and they may inquire, I'm personally choosing to wait until something actually gets done to actually react to it. Why they may do their due diligence, which is not something we could say a lot of regimes in the past have done. Shout out to our president of basketball operations falling asleep in a Donovan Mitchell workout during the draft. I think there's a lot of people with a lot of moving parts and a lot of say-so in the Knicks front office that have Leon's ear, which is why the Knicks will always be mentioned. I'm waiting to see what they actually do. And it's how you avoid driving yourself crazy during these off seasons.
And we could leave it at that. I don't think there's any need to go any further on unless something else emerges, which at that time we will do it. Other than that, though, you have to get married. So we will go and do that. Again, we will have post games for all the summer league games with the exception of game 2. So don't worry about that. And other episodes on the way in due course. But until then, everybody enjoy yourselves. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July, and we will talk to you soon. What?
It's a programming note for the rest of the week. Let me just do it real quick because I know you have to run.
Yes.
Jeremy is going live with an edition of Capitals Everything Around Me Cream on Thursday night at 7 p.m. So tune in for that on the KFS YouTube channel and then eventually on the podcast feed. As I mentioned, Chris and Sean will be live on Saturday night. We will not be having a post game on Sunday for obvious reasons mentioned at the beginning of the pod. And then, John, I don't know if you want to tell people, but you will not be back on this podcast feed, barring an emergency, for a little bit.
I don't even. I'm not even sure when I'm going to be back yet. But don't worry, you won't miss me. I'll be back soon.
He'll be back soon. So as far as the rest of the week goes, tomorrow night, Jeremy, Saturday, Chris and Sean. And then I'll return. We'll be back next week with plenty of content to coming at you with the same quality you expect here from Knicks Film School.
Thanks as always, everybody. Take care. Enjoy yourselves.